Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Arsenal Way. And yes, we have another episode of your daily Arsenal agenda, your daily show from Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. And I'm joined by the lovely Chris Davison and Alfie Lambert. Firstly, Alfie, how are you, mate?
Yeah, morning, Bailey. Not doing too bad. Excited to get into the topics today. Hope you're doing well.
Absolutely. I'm doing fine, mate. Thanks for asking. And Chris, it's been a while since me and you've been on the show, but how are you, mate? You all good?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thanks, Bailey. Getting there. Good to be back on with yourself and Alfie, and looking forward to diving into the topics this morning.
Of course, it's great to have you back, mate. And guys, before we do dive into the topics, I think it's only right we talk about last night's game. Between Crystal Palace and Liverpool. Alfie, Liverpool looked very shaky, I think, in defence. I know, of course, they're playing Nat Phillips, who doesn't usually play, but with Arsenal beating Crystal Palace the week before, does this fill you with any type of optimism that maybe Liverpool might be falling off a little bit and Arsenal might be closing that gap ever so slightly, or is it way too early to judge?
I think it is too early to judge, but the one thing that I take from it is how impressive the win at Selhurst Park was. Obviously, we know our previous record there and how tough we found it, especially on midweek games. So I think it just sort of furthered how good the performance was, even though the second half perhaps wasn't as good as the first. That own goal that killed it off. A really good win, especially to start the season. Hopefully we can build on it. But for Liverpool, I think we always know that they'll find a way back with the quality they've got. I think Nunes, struggled last night, but I think he will come back and score a few goals for him. I'm not going to get too ahead of myself here, but it's looking good for us. Let's just say that. That's all I'll say for now.
Yeah, it is looking good indeed, and it could be looking even better because we still have a couple of weeks left in the transfer window, and of course, Arsenal fans are wanting Edu to potentially bring in a midfielder. And one midfielder we've been linked to, Chris, is Moisés Caicedo from Brighton, who was absolutely phenomenal against Manchester United. Of course, Brighton have already sold Yves Bissouma to Tottenham. They've sold Marc Cucurella to Chelsea. So, is Moisés Caicedo an option in this transfer window, do you believe, Chris?
Possibly. If it's an unrealistic option, no, I'm not so sure. Because as you mentioned there, Brighton are in a very strong position. They hold all the keys. Obviously, gained a lot of money over the last couple of transfer windows now with Bissouma, obviously Ben White last summer, and Cucurella, the big one, in recent weeks. So, like I say, they're in a strong position in negotiations. They don't need to sell, and they will undoubtedly be demanding a high figure for the player. So I can see why Arsenal have maybe looked at him, or are looking at him, or at least keeping sort of tabs on his situation, because he's a clear talent. As you mentioned there, Bailey, the game against Manchester United, I thought he was phenomenal, although I don't think it takes a lot to impress against that lot at the minute. But, look, he controlled the game, great in possession, the energy that he has, the work rate, he's sort of that box-to-box player. I really like him. And I think, to be honest, Graham Potter will be wanting to use him in that sort of Bissouma role, take over from him straight away, because he's got the quality. He's got, like I say, that ability to fill that void. So they're in a very strong position. They don't need to sell, and I think he'll be very much in Brighton's plans for this season at least. Obviously, it's all, you never say never. Maybe Arsenal can test the waters a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be a realistic option this window, personally.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think maybe in the summer, but then we would have different type of targets. Of course, maybe Brighton would not want to sell him at all because they've already sold their strongest midfielder. So it is a transfer. I think this window would be very, very unlikely with just a few weeks remaining. Brighton are already short on numbers in most positions. So I doubt they'll sell Caicedo. But Alfie, how good of a signing would Caicedo be? And is he the type of profile player we should be targeting?
Yeah, I think he'd be a brilliant signing. And, as Chris touched upon there, he was great against Manchester United this season and last season. I think he scored the opening goal when they beat them 4-0. Played well against us. And I had a look. It was actually his Premier League debut. And, looking at the way he played, you would never know. He slotted in so well. He's young. He'd fit in well. He can play sort of in that 6 or perhaps in the 8 role. So I think he would be a good signing, especially... the market for sort of a 6 is quite well. There's not many players that I think would fit in our team. I think we're lucky to have a player that like Thomas Partey who can play that role. But I think that it is a really unlikely signing. I don't think he's played too many Premier League games. I think he was on loan at the start of last season. So he's definitely got a long way to go in terms of building up that experience. And I think at the moment we probably need another experienced midfielder behind him. But no, I think for me, an unlikely signing. But if we did manage to get him, a brilliant signing.
Absolutely, I do agree. I think it would be a brilliant signing. Also, yeah, I think in the defensive midfield, Arsenal do need to look to strengthen in that position sooner rather than later. So I do think that would be a quality signing for Arsenal. But Chris, another player who we've been continuously linked with, and I think as the window starts to draw near to his exit, I think a transfer is looking ever more unlikely, and that is Youri Tielemans from Leicester. And of course, time is ticking, and our reports are saying that Youri is willing to wait as a free agent and then explore his options there. Chris, is all signs pointing towards a direction that Arsenal are not going to sign the Belgian in this summer transfer?
Yeah, I think, as the window's dragged on and the closer we get to September 1st, the more unlikely this move becomes. And I don't know what else Arsenal can do or need to do in order to go for him, because unless a crazy offer comes in for Granit Xhaka, for example, I don't think we're even going to consider that departure. Torreira's gone. Guendouzi's obviously joined Marseille in a permanent deal. We know El Neni, the plan for him was to stay after he extended his contract. Obviously, I think maybe the addition of Fabio Vieira has turned some heads within the club, and that they're thinking that now his arrival gives them enough sort of rotational options and depth in midfield. We know he can play in a number 10 role. We know he can play in that number 6 and 8 role as well, if required, as well as out wide, which he did do on a number of occasions for Porto. So he's clearly got that versatility. I think Arteta actually came out and said in one of his press conferences, has he had that conversation with Vieira in terms of, has he said where he'll be playing or where he wants him to play? And Vieira told Arteta that look, he doesn't want that one fixed position. He can play anywhere in midfield. He's happy to change positions. That's what he wants to do. So, maybe all of a sudden Arteta's gone, well, okay, if that's the case, then is there much point in bringing another central midfielder in? I mean, look, I guess we'll always have different opinions as fans and compared to maybe the technical director and the manager. But, I still think with extra games to play this season, the 5 substitutions as well, now that's come into play, I think we do need someone else to come in. Whether or not it's got to be a player that starts over Thomas Partey or Granit Xhaka, I'm not so sure, because at the moment, they're 2 very, very solid and important players. You look out there at the moment and there's not many players that could come in straight away and carry on from sort of where they're left off. So, I mean, maybe the Caicedo links, for example, that makes a bit more sense because he could have that rotational role. He'll probably be happy with that. Whereas Tielemans, he'll want to be playing every week. He'll want to have a key role within the team. And, with Martin Odegaard in that number 10 role, obviously, as I mentioned, Xhaka and Partey in central midfield, is he really going to start every single week ahead of them? I'm not so sure. So, maybe food for thought for Arteta and Edu. Maybe that is why we're seeing links to different players appear, because they maybe changed their approach and the profile of player that they want to bring in midfield. But look, never say never. There can be so many dominoes fall, can't there, in the final weeks of the window? One thing leads to another. Clubs maybe give in and let the players go, or teams raise the price because they're becoming a little bit desperate to get things wrapped up in the final weeks and the final days of the window. So we'll have to wait and see. But considering other areas of the team and maybe other areas in need for Arteta, it wouldn't surprise me. I know we're going to speak about Yéremy Pino in a minute, that maybe the club have moved on and they're prioritising a wide player to come in before the end of the window.
Absolutely. And Alfie, do you believe that Fabio Vieira is potentially a reason? Can he be the player to come into Arsenal midfield and add that what we're missing and why we've been reportedly targeting players like Youri Tielemans and Lucas Paqueta, for example?
Yeah, I think that from the little I've seen of him at Porto, obviously he looks like he adds a lot of creativity. Obviously we know we've got Odegaard for adding that creativity from midfield. But the first 2 games he's had more of a role where he drops deeper and he's more involved in the build-up in midfield rather than sort of creating those chances. But when you have someone like Gabriel Jesus who created so much in that striker role, I think it sort of takes a lot off Odegaard. So bringing in someone like Vieira in that left central midfield role, I think it would be really interesting because looking at where Granit Xhaka, the positions that he was picking up, you look when he first signed and he was playing in that defensive midfield role when I think everyone knew that he wasn't suited to that. Now he's bombing forward. Who would have thought that Granit Xhaka would be a goal threat? I think, when we signed him, he could have scored 2 or 3 this season. I think he should have had another one against Leicester, that header. Really unlucky with it, but the position for the goal, he was well placed and a great finish, really. So seeing a player like Fabio Vieira, who I think it's safe to say is a bit more attacking than Granit Xhaka, I think it will be really exciting to see him in a role in certain games. But I don't think we can take anything away from Xhaka because he's been, for me, the last 6 months, one of our most important players. Just in the way he plays, the leadership, the experience he brings. I think that the main thing is the experience because players like Vieira, I don't want to say too much about his physicality because he does look a bit weak. But in certain games, it will be really physical for him, and I think that he might struggle where I think Granit Xhaka will be better suited. But then, in games where we're struggling and we need that added creativity from midfield, then I think Vieira will be perfect in that left central midfield role.
Absolutely, and just on Granit Xhaka as well, because anytime Xhaka will finish the season and there'll be a big international competition, for example, you'll go for Switzerland and we'd see a complete different Granit Xhaka, and you're like, where is this guy for Arsenal? He's dominating midfield, he's scoring important goals, and I think these last 6 months he started to bring that Switzerland form, what I was saying, to Arsenal, and he's just such an important player, and I think he's untouchable now. I would not sell him for if any club came in for a proposal. I'd rather keep Granit Xhaka than bring in a Youri Tielemans, for example, because he is that important. And when Granit Xhaka and Thomas Partey play at the same time, we hardly ever lose a game, and never those two are crucial in Arsenal's midfield. But enough with the midfield, guys. Let's talk about the wing positions. But before we do, guys, make sure to leave your questions in the comment box because we'll be answering them towards the end of the show. So make sure you do that. But let's move on to the wingers position and let's talk about Yéremy Pino, Chris, because he has been linked with the club quite heavily this week. But Arsenal now have a price reveal where how much they can sign him for. With the price that is being quoted, do you believe Arsenal should do you think they should pay it or should they look elsewhere? Because he's still young, he's still only 19 without any Premier League experience.
Yeah, when the links first came about, you're thinking, is it going to be a risk on its own because of his age, and maybe he's not played many games, he's fairly inexperienced still, got a lot of learning to do, a lot of development to go through, but he's quite clearly talented. I think when you look at certain attacking players nowadays, they are just naturally gifted from a young age. You look at Gabriel Martinelli, for example. He came from Brazil. No disrespect to the teams and the leagues over there, but obviously the difference in standard and in quality and that step up that he took was huge. And from day one, he had the determination, he had the attitude, and he had the quality, the potential to make it at Arsenal, and that's led to him being such an important player for us today, getting the plaudits from the likes of Jurgen Klopp saying he's a talent of the century or whatever he said. 2 goals, 2 games now it is for him, and he's playing a key role under Mikel Arteta, and there's no reason why we can't go out there and get someone similar who can go on to do the same and follow in his footsteps. Obviously, we've mentioned Marquinhos before because obviously he's coming from Brazil, a young player who maybe is a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe not to obviously complete yet. He's still a little bit rough around the edges, got a lot of development to go through, but he's got the quality, he's got the potential to go on and do great things. And with Yéremy Pino, he's playing at a high level already in La Liga. Obviously, he got a very well. Obviously, this will split and divide opinion, but in my opinion, got a very good manager in Unai Emery. Certainly in La Liga, anyway. that, obviously we'll be improving in and be working with him closely. And yeah, I mean, obviously a player that we've been linked with before. I think when Emery was still actually in charge. And look, quality on the ball, pacey. We know he can score goals, create them as well. Works hard, full of energy down the flanks. And yeah, I mean, in today's market, I think whatever price you're looking at, it's always going to be fairly high because he's still very young. Again, Villarreal, they're going to be demanding as much as they can for their star players because, again, he played a very important part for them last season, but he's had a very good start again this season for them. So, they're not going to ultimately at the end of the day want to sell him. So they're going to be looking for, to get as much as they possibly can. And like I say, when you're a young player in La Liga or, in one of the top 5 leagues in Europe, etc., and you're banging in the goals, you're putting in some really, really bright performances, getting the assists and ultimately proving to be, one of the standouts in that team and helping them get results, then you're going to raise your profile, you're going to gain attention from other clubs, and Villarreal will be looking at a situation and obviously they're going to be putting up the price even further, with the amount of performances or good performance that he puts in, the amount of goals and assists he gets, etc. You see that with any player nowadays when they're impressing. So, look, we'll have to wait and see how this plays out. We know that obviously Edu has been in Valencia, which isn't far from Villarreal. It's easy to meet up with people and have meetings with representatives maybe of the player. We don't know obviously at this stage if that has been happening, but again, it's interesting time to be over there with the links surfacing, and we'll have to wait and see how it pans out. But yeah, I mean, some people can sit there and say it is a risk, with the price and with the age. There's no guarantee he will come over here and set the world alight. It might take him some time, but look, I think obviously he's a player that Mikel Arteta would have studied very, very closely, and there's obviously an acceptance at the club that he's a player that could help the team. And I think, that is what we need to be looking for. Solid competition for the likes of Saka, Gabriel Martinelli, someone who can push them. And we need depth. We need support, competition in that area, because we can't keep relying on Bukayo Saka every week. We can't keep relying on Gabriel Martinelli every week. We know he's struggled with injuries at times, as has Smith Rowe, who, as we know, has come in and played on the left-hand side as well. So, it's more than anyone. It's that support and competition for Saka. Nicolas Pepe's future up in the air at the moment. We don't know how that's going to pan out as well. So that could always play a part in the final weeks of the winter, depending on what we do in that area. So, like I say, I mentioned the domino effect and things that start to fall. I think we could see that in the remaining weeks of the winter, and we'll just have to wait and see how it pans out. But fingers crossed we can get an extra man in that wide area, because I think it'll be really helpful for us this season.
Absolutely, it would be helpful indeed. And just before we do end the show, Alfie, I'm going to ask you this question from Neanderthal, and he asks, are we serious title contenders this season? What should we realistically expect?
I think this is a tough question. I think it's one of those ones. I don't want to say we're title contenders and then we end up scrapping top 4 at the end of the season. I think what I'll say is I think that we've got a really exciting squad with lots of young talent, and it's always with young talent, you never know whether they can show up in sort of the big games, the feisty games, the likes of Newcastle and Spurs at the end of last season. I think that was a great bit of sort of a wake-up call for them, and I think that this season we'd maybe get through those sort of games, and I think we'd get 4 points from those two. Let's see how the next few. We haven't had a proper test yet. When we go to Old Trafford, if we beat United at Old Trafford, no matter what state Manchester United are in, we seem to struggle at Old Trafford. I mean, last season the 3-2. If we beat United at Old Trafford, then I'll start to have a bit of belief. If we've picked up, we've only dropped a couple before we go to Old Trafford, because we've got I don't want to say an easy running, because no game's easy in the Premier League anymore, but we've got a favourable running. Then I'll start believing, and especially if City drop a couple of points along the way.
Interesting. Let's see how this goes. But Chris, actually, before we do end the show, I want to ask you this one from Paul Mizzle. He says, it's a random one, but what about Victor Moses as a mentor/squad player? 31, Premier League experience, right wing, left wing, right wing back, left wing back, and more. Please, we'll complete the Abramovich set. Chris, are you in agreement with Paul here?
Well, I must admit, I did not expect Victor Moses to pop up in the comment section. Look, Paul, I can kind of see where you're coming from, but no, surely we've learned from previous mistakes now in getting in aging players that have maybe passed their best. We need to be looking to the future, looking at players that can make a difference right now and in the years ahead. And yeah, I don't think we need to be going down a Victor Moses route. Look, obviously a player that can operate in, and obviously you mentioned the positions there, Paul, come in very handy. But I'd like to think there's other players out there that can maybe operate in similar positions, similar roles, rather than obviously going for an aging player that won't have much to give, in the near future. So, yeah, look, no disrespect to them, but I don't want another Lichtsteiner. I don't want another Willian. Please, Arsenal, no more of that. We've very much got to look at the future, at the present now, and go for players that will, make a difference straight away and ultimately help us get back to the Champions League stage and obviously compete against the top teams.
Absolutely. Look, Williams back on the free transfer, so he's available. You never know. Eddie might just try.
Don't even mention it.
Don't even mention it. Yeah, I was so sorry. After guys watching, Williams' name cannot be mentioned in here. But we are going to end the show there. Alfie, as always, thank you for jumping on, mate.
No, thank you for both for having me on, and thank you to everyone for listening and getting the questions in. I think, yeah, Victor Moses, stay well clear. But no, thank you everyone for tuning in.
Absolutely. And Chris, as always, mate, thank you for jumping in too.
Pleasure as always, Bailey. Thank you, Alfie, and of course, thank you to everyone tuning in this morning. I hope everyone has a great day.
Absolutely, guys. If you like the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel, as this is a Monday to Friday thing, so you don't want to miss tomorrow's episode. So make sure you do press and hammer the subscribe button, and most importantly, guys, make sure you keep following us down the Arsenal way.